I am so happy to introduce my guest today, musicologist and musician Riccardo Castagnetti. We are going to talk about 18th century music education pedagogy, focusing on the methods of Andrea Basili. Riccardo, welcome to the Nikhil Hogan Show.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for inviting me and for the nice presentation.
It's such a pleasure to have you, and I'm so thrilled to talk with experts of the 18th century. Let's actually, before we start talking about your research, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the audience?
As you said, I am a musician and a musicologist, but I began as a musician. And I could say that I had a kind of non-linear music training since I began studying cello and I ended up graduating in organ. So
wow.
I really loved playing the cello, and I still think it's probably the most beautiful instrument. But the organ is certainly the funniest.
Well, somebody said that it is the same as the human voice, the same range. Is that right?
Yes. It's almost the same of the tenor voice.
Ah, I see. So please continue. Don't let me stop you.
Yeah. So while I was studying cello by the second year, I got more and more interested in composition, and I began to study it by myself using just Walter Piston's harmony. And during the cello course, according to the Italian Conservatory curriculum, I had to attend also a complementary piano class. So I began to play the piano, and I discovered that it was really useful to be able to play musical examples and to do the exercise on the keyboard before write them down. And so I switched to piano. And then I became more and more interested in composition. So I decided to switch to composition. And while I was studying composition, according to the Italian curriculum, if you study composition, you have to attend also a organ class. I discovered the organ. So I decided to switch to organ. And then I finished my training graduating in organ, and I was very lucky because in that time I had to admit I had quite a temper. So I
in what sense?
I was always goofing around and not certain of what I was interested in more. And I was curious to find out always new things. And so finally I found a teacher who was a really good teacher, and he let me do almost whatever I wanted. And so, but I the 90% of what I know about music, I have learned from him. So
Who is your teacher?
His name is Stefano Innocenti. He's a wonderful organist and pianist and harpsichordist. And yes, and organ course was also, I think, the unique, really complete music course in Italian conservatory at that time, because when you study organ in Italy, you have to attend also a composition class, thorough bass class, improvisation class, and so I could keep together all my interests.
Ah, wonderful. And okay, so then what happened next then? How did you eventually end up on your current research?
So I've been always interested in improvisation. So I think it was 2013. I read for the first time the book by Giorgio Sanguinetti, and in that year I had just finished to play all the 48 preface and fugues by Bach in 4 concerts. So I had just finished to study the Well-Tempered Clavier by Bach, and reading in the book by Sanguinetti that there was an Italian musician of the 18th century that wrote the counterpart of the well-tempered clavier. Was quite a surprise for me. So I decided to investigate about this almost unknown, at least to me, composer who was Andrea Basili.
Riccardo, had anybody done any research on him before you started?
No. Not a complete research on his teaching method or his music. His musical production is almost unknown now.
It's crazy. I just want to mention how astonishing that there's such a blank, empty space when it comes to a lot of Italian history and music history. It almost is like, and people have said, like, the German history has kind of taken over classical music, and it's all German. But it's kind of amazing that somebody like Andrea Basili, who we will talk about, was quite an impressive person. Nothing. Yes.
He was quite an outsider because he lived, we can say, isolated from the musical Italian environment. He was connected only by letter writing, but he lived and composed and spent almost his life in Loreto. Was a very important place, but far from the big center of music production in Italy.
Is Loreto, is that in the south of Italy?
It's in the middle of Italy.
Okay, so you're saying that was not like a major center like Naples or Bologna or Rome?
Wasn't.
Okay, or Venice, okay.
No. Yes, Loreto is famous for the sanctuary, and this sanctuary is one of the major stages of the Italian Grand Tour, but it's not famous for his music.
Right. So can you tell me your journey and how you started to investigate? Because this seems like a very interesting story. I wonder where you would start.
I started from the end, I could say, because I started from the only published work by Andrea Basili, the Musica universale armonico-pratica, who certainly is his major work, but it is not his only work. So I began from that publication, and then I found out many other treatises spread all over Europe and in the US, and I tried to reconstruct his biography and his method of teaching, analyzing his treatises, his letters, and his compositions.
When you said starting at the end, do you mean by the fact that was published in 1776 and he died, what was it, next one year later?
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about that book?
Yes. This book is the first printed book that contains partimentos, and is a musical course, is intended to teach through partimentos and musical examples how to compose. And it is divided in 24 esercizi, exercise, and each exercise has 4 different steps or different layers. And so in each exercise you find 4 different kind of pieces. The first one is the practice of the rule of octave, so you find a scale. And in the second position you find a kind of exercise in third bass or partimento. And the third step is fugue, and Basili used both partimento fugues and written out fugues. And the last piece is a sonata or a capriccio, so a sonata form or free form that focuses on music performance, expression, and virtuosity. And there are 24 exercises like the 24 Preludes and Fugues by Bach in all the 24 major and minor keys.
Right. Could you compare that with something like Fenaroli or Forno? How is it kind of different from like Fenaroli? Obviously, the exercises are in different keys, but is this you mentioned fugue, so it goes, that's quite difficult then, right? So is it for beginners and for advanced? Is it for everyone?
I was very lucky because I found the original manuscript of this work.
What does original mean? By his hand?
Yes. Autograph.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And in the autograph, there's a preface, then Basili decided to quit. Because in the preface, he writes that this work is intended is addressed to amateurs and professionals. But in fact, it is a work for professional musicians because it really contains very difficult exercises, very high level, skilled exercise for musicians. So I think that you can practice the first two steps as an amateur, so the rule of octave and the thorough bass exercises. But then when you arrive to the fugues, it becomes very tricky. So you have to know what to do, and you must be an expert musician.
Is it very difficult? I mean, like compared to Fenaroli's Partimento fugues, what's the difficulty of them? And was he a virtuoso himself? So did he?
He was a virtuoso keyboard player. There are some witnesses of his activity while he was still in Rome that defines him very good at the keyboard. And there are some pieces in the Musica universale that are virtuosic in nature, so are meant to show the ability of the performer. The fugues are really difficult, I think, some way even more difficult than other Partimento fugues. For example, in very first exercise, you find a fugue with the hidden entries immediately, so you are not prepared to work on a fugue by other previous steps, and you have to figure out without any previous information how to find out where to put the subject. And I think that even the subjects that Basili chooses for his fugues are quite difficult and somewhat extravagant. You find some odd intervals, so some augmented intervals in the subjects. Some subjects are made up of arpeggios, so requires a kind of digital ability to perform even the subject. So I think that, it's similar to the Partimento fugue tradition, but Basili has his own style that is different in many features to the Neapolitan style of writing.
Okay, that's a good topic because he was trained by someone called Tommaso Gaffi, and Tommaso Gaffi was trained by Bernardo Pasquini. So could you say that's like a Roman tradition?
Yeah, I could say that. And if you analyze Basili's style, not only in the Musica universale, but also in his sacred music work, you find that there are some features that are more similar to the style of the first 2 decades of 18th century. and in some way more similar to a Baroque way of thinking music than a galant way. I explain myself. Many pieces in the Musica universale, you find something that we could define extravaganzas, something that is clearly meant to shock the audience, to amaze the audience. For example, there's a Partimento in which you find a complete chromatic scale, a raising chromatic scale, and you have to harmonize it using perfect chords and augmented fifth chords. So it's a kind of harmony that it's rather rare to find in other partimentos. Or, for example, you find the fugue subjects that span more than an octave, so they are very, very broad. They have a big melodic extension, so it is difficult to add the inner parts when you play in three parts. So in galant style, you'd expect to get more pleased or delighted by music and not amazed. So I don't know if I
no, you explained it well.
Yeah.
Here's a question I have. You mentioned this is at the end of his life. It was published in 1776, but I read somewhere that these were composed earlier, something like 1736. Is that true?
It's not true. No, because it was a misreading of a letter, I think, by the librarian of the Bologna Conservatory, Gaetano Gaspari, who misread 1773 for 1731. I think that Basili began to compose these pieces in the 1770s, because around that time he began to organize all his teaching materials, teaching tools in a sort of consistent method, not only for composers but also for singers. In that time he also composed a series of solfeggi organized in the same way as the Musica universale, following the order of the 24 minor and major keys. And it is a reorganization of his teaching method and a renovation of his teaching method that he began at the end of his life.
Let's talk more about the man himself. So I really would love to hear the kind of biographical information you uncovered in your research. He was born in 1705 and trained by the people we mentioned earlier, Pasquini and Gaffi. But it seemed like from the material you sent me, he had before his maestro di cappella job in Loreto, he had quite a varied career. He seemed like he was playing the organ, he was playing the trombone, he was singing, he was a counterpoint teacher. So let's talk about his kind of his professional life.
He was sent to Rome by his family to study music, to perfection his musical training. And in Rome, he certainly studied with Tommaso Bernardo Gaffi and probably with Giuseppe Ottavio Pitoni, but I'm not so sure because I didn't find any source stating that apart from a letter of Basili's friend to Martini. And so in Rome, after he finished his musical training, he tried to enter the world of the opera composer production. So in the meanwhile, he had to earn a living, and so he did many musical jobs, among them, as you mentioned, the organist, trombone player, and the teacher, of course. And in his Roman period, he also taught music to an English gentleman who was in Rome to study painting.
Wow.
And in his biography, there's written that he studied counterpoint and singing with Basili. And also we have a very interesting and beautiful source, a little caricature by the painter Pierleone Ghezzi of Basili, teaching to sing to two young boys, a boy and a girl, because while he was in Rome, he had been appointed maestro di cappella for 1 year in Tivoli, and one of his duties was to teach to the choir boys in order to produce new singers for the choir. And so while he was in Rome, he did many things.
Quick question, Riccardo. Do we have manuscripts of his teaching solfeggi?
Yes. We have many manuscripts and also some sketches that refer to his way of teaching solfeggio.
And is that the 18th century hexachordal Italian way?
Basili was quite eclectical in his way of teaching solfeggio according to his manuscript treatises. He certainly used the Italian method, so the syllables, but he used also the letters. And he also, in a manuscript, praised the new system of solfeggio invented by Flavio Chigi, who invented a solfeggio based on 12 syllables, one for each chromatic note. So you have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, then pa, be, tu, and
wow.
I don't remember. But for the beginners, he used the hexachordal syllables.
Okay, and is it kind of like, because everybody's using the research by Nicholas Baragwanath now, is it similar to that? Does he mutate? Do you see mutations and that sort of thing?
Yes. We have a little treatise on solfeggio where you find what you should find also in plain chant treatises or in church solfeggio treatises, let's say that way. So you sing the hexachord, then you sing not only step motion, but like figures, or such as raised by third, down by a second. Then you find part on mutations. So, and he is very pedagogical in his writings, because he writes all the syllables under the different notes, so that the student can find an help in order to learn where is the mutation. And
is there any way to access those manuscripts to because I think those would be very useful for a lot of people.
You can find this method of teaching in many published treatises in the 18th century. Basili was not original in his writings. He just used what was like a traditional method of teaching solfeggio, this kind of solfeggio, I mean. Then after what we can call the ancient style solfeggio, Basili wrote also gallant style solfeggios.
So he received minor orders in the church.
Yeah.
So you're saying he also taught plain chant, and is that like Gregorian chant as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Of
so
course,
is that
liturgical chant.
I see.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I think that his family wanted it to be a priest, but then he switched for the musical career. But during his life, when he was already in Loreto, he quitted for 1 year his job in Loreto because he was totally dissatisfied of the chapel of the choir in Loreto, because there were many problems of discipline among the singers. And in Loreto, his uncle, Francesco Basili Senior, was an important and wealthy priest. And when he died, he left a certain amount of money that only a priest of the Basili family could inherit. So Basili thought for 1 year to complete his training and being ordered as a priest in order to go back to Città della Pieve and finish his musical career. But then he returned to Loreto and stayed there until his death.
Oh, right. And so he applied for that job and for the vacancy, right, of the maestro di cappella there. And do you know anything about that audition?
Yeah, it was really a quite famous audition, because being a maestro di cappella in Loreto was an important job and well-paid job. So when he won this vacancy and he went to Loreto, there were many people in Rome that had a kind of envy of his luck. And you have a description of what happened in this competition, how they were selected. And I was able to find also his composition, the composition that he submitted for this job. And it's a really interesting composition in the ancient style, well written and full of learned counterpoint.
How well known was he in his life? So you mentioned that was quite a prestigious position. Did he write letters to other people, and was he friends with important musicians, or did he have students that were famous or influential? And I just want to know his position at the time.
Yeah, he was a friend, first of all, of Padre Giambattista Martini in Bologna, with whom he had a very long exchange of letters during his life, starting from 1748 and until the last year of his life. But he was also in touch with the Roman and Neapolitan musician. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find letters of Basili apart from those written to Padre Martini.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah, but that's a pity because his widow burned them all after
really?
his death. Yes, because his epistolary exchanges with Padre Martini are very interesting. And so after Martini's death, Martini's pupil Stanislao Mattei wanted to publish the exchange of letters among Martini and Basili, and wrote to Basili's son Francesco in order to get all the letters that Martini sent him. But Francesco replied that my mother has destroyed all of them.
Destroyed?
So it's impossible.
Oh,
destroyed. Yes.
Wow. That's a shame.
No, that's a shame, yes.
But you still have Basili's letters, though.
Yes, we have. from the letters he sent to Martini, we can infer that he was also in touch with Girolamo Chiti in Rome, Francesco Feo, and other Neapolitan composers. And he was also in touch with other musicians in Europe, such as Johann Baptist Pauli, who was the musician who sent Bach's compositions to Martini that are still in his collection, and other minor composers, most of them from Italy.
Any interesting musical opinions that we find in the letters, in the correspondence? I'd love to know, like, if Basili said, I like this composer, or I think this composition is amazing, or did he express any opinions that might be interesting?
Yeah. In a letter to Martini, Basili writes down what could said to be his musical pantheon, and it was all made by Neapolitan composers' names.
Oh, wow. Like who?
Names, Durante, Di Maio, Leo, and so on. But of course, apart from those composers, the name that you find most quoted in the letter is that of Palestrina, because it was one of the interests that he shared with Martini, the one about the Roman school and the polyphonic Renaissance music.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about counterpoint and how he taught counterpoint. You mentioned that he had an Italian version of Fuchs's Gradus ad Parnassum.
Yeah, he translated Fuchs Gradus ad Parnassum, and
from Latin?
Yeah, from Latin.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not the first Italian translation. There is at least one that is possible Basili had seen by Geminiano Giacomelli, but the translation, it's not a real translation. It's better to call it a version, because in some aspects it's different from the original. But Basili translated all the book by Fuchs for what he said, for his students, in order to make it accessible to his students that weren't able to read the original Latin book. And in that time, I think that this book was already quite rare to find in Italy. And it's very interesting how Basili translated Fuchs, because he added some personal remarks about what Fuchs writes in his treatise, and makes a significant change in the form of the second part of the book. So it's possible to see from that manuscript how Basili intended and used this book for his teaching activity, and how this book was linked to the other teaching tools used in the same period. The translation is from 1748, and in the same year, among Basili's manuscript, we found a huge collection of scores of polyphonic Renaissance music by Palestrina, da Vittoria, and other composers of the Roman school. And Basili, it's quite clear, used this collection in parallel with the species method in order to teach counterpoint. So you'd have written exercises in counterpoint, and then analysis of scores of authors. So he used both a practical written approach and an analytical approach based on the exercise of scoring the compositions that were written originally in part books, and the activity of scoring and analyzing the composition was part of his counterpoint teaching method.
So he would take existing masterworks and also kind of combine it in an integrated way.
Yeah.
So basically, even though Fuchs was Austrian, he did study, I believe, right? Did he study in Italy, in Rome?
Yeah, probably he went to Rome, and he had the possibility to study there. And in fact, the Gradus at Parnassum is a systematization of a method of teaching counterpoint that was already in use in Italy since the 16th century.
Wow, okay, so the species method didn't originate with Fuchs, this is what you're saying?
No, absolutely. Fuchs didn't invent the species method. We find it mentioned already in a work by a theorist, Lanfranco, in his Scintille di Musica in the 16th century. And then we find it used by Girolamo Frescobaldi in teaching counterpoint to his students. We have some very interesting manuscripts where we find the species counterpoint exercises. And then we have many treatises that speak about teaching counterpoint in a way that is similar or identical to Fuchs' way of teaching, or the method described in the Gradus at Parnassum, such as Berardi, Banchieri, Bononcini. And Fuchs quotes some of them in the treatise. So he didn't calls himself the inventor of this method.
Right. Can you help explain to me the Fuchs counterpoint species approach and also the thorough-bass approach, the basso continuo approach? How are they different? How are they integrated? Are they opposed? Are they complementary? Could you help explain that to me?
Well, there's a book by an Italian theorist entitled I primi albori musicali. The name of the author is Lorenzo Penna. In this book, he states that the counterpoint is the theory of music and the thorough bass is the practice of music. So the two methods are not opposed and not opposable, I think. And if you look at some treatises, composition and counterpoint treatises of the 17th century, you find that sometimes when you have a three-part composition or a two-part composition, on the score there are written numbers that indicates the intervals on the bass line. So Lorenzo Penna, I think, was stating that thorough bass is a shorthand notation of counterpoint, and it is, of course, an important and valuable tool for studying and composing. But the real fundamentals of composition are to be found in counterpoint. So Fuchs does not mention thorough bass in his Gradus at Parnassum, but in Fuchs you find an example when he uses a descending C major scale as cantus firmus, and it is of course a rule of octave written out counterpointly, but it is a rule of octave. So I think that the idea was that counterpoint is necessary to master the voice leading and to write independent lines. The study of counterpoint and the study of thorough bass are complementary. They are not opposable. And I think that even to the composers of the 18th century, it was quite clear. Maybe from teacher to teacher, what was different was the importance given to counterpoint or thorough bass as a teaching tool or starting point of music study. There's an interesting manuscript by Basili, one of the last, I think. It's from the 1775, entitled Musical Instructions, istruzioni musicali, that can be used both as an introduction to counterpoint and to thorough bass. So there are aspects of music theory that are shared by counterpoint and thorough bass, and you can apply them in counterpoint or in thorough bass depending on what you want to stress. You want to study voice leading. Of course, a species counterpoint is very useful and maybe more useful than thorough bass. You want to study in which way is better to connect the harmonies, or you want to underline the thread, the filo of the composition, and as Göringen calls it, so thorough bass or partimento is the best.
Can I ask you, Riccardo, about chord invertibility? I think by 1776, there are new theories, or Rameau. Everyone must have been aware of them. And did that find its way into any of Basili's teachings, thinking of chords from a fundamental base?
So Basili read Rameau, but I think that he didn't understand anything about his theories, because in a letter he wrote to Martini, he writes that he does not find in Rameau anything that he has already found in Athanasius Kircher, who was a 17th century theorist. So I think that Rameau was quite obscure to Basili, but he uses indeed the idea of chordal inversion. And we find an example even in his translation of Gradus ad Parnassum, where Fuchs has some difficulties in dealing with chordal inversion. And for him, a triad is only the perfect triad. And when he wants to describe a first inversion chord, he has to describe the intervals, like figured bass notation. And Basili, in his translation, adds some remarks on that, saying that this is what he calls musica derivata. Basili distinguishes three kinds of chordal types, we can say in this way. The musica semplice, which is based on perfect triads in root position, and then musica derivata, which is based on first inversions chords, and then musica figurata, which is the music that uses dissonant chords and other forms of melodic and harmonic features that are not rephrase that. Yes, the musica figurata for Basili is he puts in musica figurata whatever is not reducible to not reducible. Basili wrote about his theories always in different ways, and he uses many different labels and concepts, sometimes it's not so clear, but he certainly had the concept of first inversion chord. But then, for example, in Basili, the inversion of the dominant seventh is not thought as an inversion of a chord, but as a 3/6 chord with an acciaccatura. And then, for example, the dominant chord on G, if you have the root on D, the F for Basili is a dissonant sound added to, and the G is a dissonant sound added to the chord. So it's quite difficult for him to explain all the theoretical aspects of chordal inversion. So I think that he didn't understand what Rameau was saying in his treatise. So yes, there are some aspects that were already circulating in Italy about the chordal inversion, but not all the theories by Rameau were understood.
Is there anything else about Basili that we should mention that we didn't get a chance to?
He was not only a musician, he was an erudite, a scholar. He was an amateur painter, and he was very interested in medicine. In his sketchbooks, we find some remarks on ophthalmology, and he tried to translate the Musica Universalis by Athanasius Kircher in Italian, and the Musica Universalis is an encyclopedic work of thousands of pages, so it was really an hard task to accomplish, and he didn't manage to finish it, and it stopped after translating the index. And I think that he was a man of his time in that aspect, that he tried to put together all the different aspects of music theory and music practice that were changing so fast in the 18th century, and to keep together the methods of an ancient school of music and the modern discoveries.
And you are publishing something on him, right?
I finished to edit the Musica Universale, and I hope to publish it in the next years, and possibly to record it on CD. And I'm currently working on his Solfeggio collections, and that's all for Basili, I think, because the next year I'll start a new project on Martini collection of letters, and I'll begin to work on another and different topic.
I can't wait to see what you publish. And before we end, Riccardo, I want to ask you a few questions now, not about Basili, but just from you, about music education today. How should what's your advice to learning Partimento, learning counterpoint? How should people start learning music?
Well, I think that the three main actions to learn music are always the same from the Middle Age to our days. You have to listen, to repeat, and to memorize. And the difficult task is to learn how to listen, so become able to analyze what you listen, and to are able to. The first thing you have to listen, because music is something that should sound like a living thing and not as a dead language, like learning Latin or ancient Greek. And so you have to use your fingers, your voice, but first of all, your ears. And so the oral moment is crucial, I think, to learn music. And this is true for the students and for the teachers. And if I think about one of the most important teaching tools of the Renaissance, but still in use in the 18th century, the duo, so the master and the pupil that sing together and listen to each other. This is really an image of the first crucial element in music, relationship and listen to each other. The second, repeat, because what you have listened must become part of you. And so you have to repeat in order to make what you have listened something inner. And of course, you must not repeat as a parrot. And I think that some students quit studying music because they realize that are treated like parrots that have to repeat and repeat and repeat without understanding why. And I think that you should repeat, because repeating is important to memorize what you have learned, and you have to repeat the same things but not in the same way. So you have to add something new in every time you repeat, and then you have to memorize to build a storehouse of materials, experiences that you can use whenever you need them. And if you have such a collection of experiences, materials, you can really be creative and you can really enjoy music. I think this is the first important thing. You have to enjoy music and not to suffer on it. So if you think about the way probably Basili, but all the composers in the 18th century thought about composition, you have to refer to rhetoric. And in rhetoric, in order to learn how to give a speech, you have to observe a three-step method. In Latin, it is the first one is the inventio, the second disposition, the last one elocutio. So if you want to give a speech, the first thing is to find out the proper arguments, the topics that you want to talk about. The first step to write a good speech or a homily, if you're a priest, is to find good arguments or good topics to talk about in order to persuade your listeners. And then when you have found these arguments, these topics, you have to organize them into a speech. So you have to give a form to this speech, and in many theoretical treatises you find a description of a composition in terms of a speech. So you have a beginning, a middle section, and an ending. And finally, when you have organized all your materials, you have to decorate them in order to make them sound at their best, and in order to not only convince and persuade your listeners, but also to give pleasure to them, give a speech that your listener enjoys. And so if you think about the first step, the inventio, we think that invent something should be like create from nothing, but it is quite the opposite. For the person who wants to give a speech, the first important thing is to find arguments and topics that are valuable, and it doesn't matter if they have been already used by others. And so the same is for composition. If a subject, a melody or an harmonic turn is good, then use it. So I think that an idea of creativity, like being like a person who can create something absolutely new that nobody has used before, is not suitable to describe the way the composer thought about composition in the 18th century.
Riccardo, when you speak about rhetoric, I have been pretty much very interested in how the church played a role in the 18th century, where music education came out of the Catholic Church. And did that, when you're speaking of rhetoric, often plain chant, Gregorian chant, takes the text from the Bible, from the Vulgate and from the Latin.
Yeah.
And do you find there's a strong connection there with the Catholic tradition there in Italy and with the people like Basili?
Yes, there's a strong connection. I think that the church was in charge of children learned how to read and how to sing in schools that were ruled by church or friars, so religious orders, and their curriculum deeply influenced the music. And for example, the study of ancient style solfeggio was part of the education in the seminaries and in the schools ruled by religious orders. So when you think about the solmization, the hexachord, they were tools that church used in the 18th century and in the 19th century. So there's a long-standing tradition of music education connected with the church institutions.
Well, it's been an incredible hour talking to you, Riccardo. I learned so much. You spoke briefly about your projects, and how can people contact you if they want to get more information about your research on Basili and Partimento and all that sort of thing?
They can email me. My email.
Oh, great! I'll put that. I'll put that in the show notes, and then they can find that. That's wonderful. The final question, which is, how have you seen music education change? Have people been more interested in Partimento and thorough bass and counterpoint? Have you seen a difference in the last couple of years?
Yes, there is. There has been quite a revolution since 2000, I think, when I began studying music. Solfeggio was really a dreadful thing, just raising up and down your hand and saying the notes. And now the stress on improvisation, on solfeggio as a musical tool and not an horrible or dreadful tool is something that has changed a lot. I think the way we organize and think and structure the musical curriculum. In Italy, there's still many things to do in that way.
But well, it's been a great pleasure to talk to the great Riccardo Castagnetti, and it's been a real pleasure, Riccardo. Thank you for being on the Nikhil Hogan Show. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.